Hi everybody and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Form's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm Dan Ullman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up in this week's edition of Out of the Gate. We're going to have a lot of fun this week. 2 Grade 1 stakes races for 2-year-olds in Southern California. DRF handicapper Matt Bernier and I will go over the Los Alamitos CashCall Futurity, the DRF Bets Saturday race of the day. We'll also talk about the Grade 1 Starlet Stakes. Also the Caribbean Clasic at Gulfstream Park, a full field of horses based in Latin America. It's the first time this historic race has taken part outside of Latin America. JK's Play of the Day, a daily double at Los Alamitos. Nicole Russo will go over the pedigrees of the major contenders in that Grade 1 CashCall Futurity, perhaps a springboard to the Kentucky Derby. Craig Milkowski's TimeformUS Spotlight. It's the Garland of Roses Stakes, plus horses to watch, best bets, and lots more. So let's break out of the gate. We begin out of the gate with our horse watch segment. Matt, your horse to watch this week stunned the universe. First time out at Gulfstream Park. And sometimes these horses, when they win, you think it might be a fluke or he didn't beat a great field, but this horse looked good.
Yeah, she looked really good. This is Miss Painter, and it was the first race of the entire championship meet down at Gulfstream. We're going to take a look right now. She was forwardly placed throughout. She wasn't outright on the lead, but you see her taking over right now. The fractions, yes, they look slow. The turf course early on has played a little bit on the slower side, but I love the way that she finishes here. She's a daughter of Painter. She's out of a Dynaformer mare. She galloped out okay, decent enough, but considering this was her first start, she seemed very professional. I'm going to be interested to see what you get out of her going forward. She earned a 79 buyer in this spot. Again, so much of turf racing, I think, is visual, not necessarily just taking it at face value what the number is. I thought she looked good. Tactical speed on turf is always dangerous. Be anxious to see what she does next time out.
Looks like the kind that can step up into an entry-level allowance race or even a low-level stake, and is going to be a price because of these low-profile yet very capable connections. Certainly an interesting filly to watch. You know, the first crop of Painter, they didn't really get off to a fast start. I have a feeling that they're going to be late developing types that want distance, and maybe this horse is going to fit that bill. My horse watch this week, a more established name. We all know Mind Your Biscuits, and I really thought he gave a gutty effort in the Cigar handicap behind favorite Sharp Azteca. They swing into the stretch, and I think the Cigar Mile was a situation where you give the best horse the best trip, and that horse just makes you pay. Sharp Azteca sat off 2 speeds all by himself, got the jump on Mind Your Biscuits turning into the stretch, and you could just say good night, Irene. Mind Your Biscuits, though, is really digging in second position. He earned a 107 buyer speed figure for this race, and he's only run one bad one in 2017, and that was in the Grade 1 Forgo over a track where it's quite apparent he does not like Saratoga at all. Trainer Chad Summers has a lot of options. I think 2 options are the best. One, he could go the route of earlier in this season. He could go to the Gulfstream Park Sprint en route to the Dubai Golden Shaheen, or he could give this horse a little bit of a deserved break and decide to come back in the Carter handicap as a prep for the Metropolitan Mile. I think either way, if this horse stays sound, he could be ripe for a big 5-year-old campaign in 2018. That's Mind Your Biscuits, my horse watch in this week's Out of the Gate. Let's get to some handicapping. 2 Grade 1s at Los Alamitos for the 2-year-olds. Let's take a look at the field for Saturday's DRF Bets Race of the Day, the Grade 1 CashCall Futurity, race number 3 at Los Alamitos. For expanded stakes previews of a slew of stakes races all weekend long, please visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel, and you can access free DRF Formulator Pass performances for this race on the Race of the Day event page on drf.com. Matt Bob Baffert, really the story of this race. He's got the 5 McKinsey at 6-5, the 3 Solomini, both Keeneland grads, that one at 7-5. Let's start with Solomini, who's the more experienced of the two, not only from number of races, but number of route races. He has 2, McKinsey has 0. Let's go back to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I thought this race was perfectly fine, a good second place finish.
Absolutely nothing wrong with this effort. I like what Flavian Pratt did, rounding the far turn. He just said, you know what, we're going to try to break it open. Unfortunately for him, they ran into Chad Brown's monster here in Good Magic, and he ran him down. Didn't like a little bit late with the lead change, Solomini, and I'm starting to wonder, he's the kind of horse, is he, I made the analogy in the preview, is he Calculator from a few years ago when American Pharaoh he ran into, and he ran into some other good ones, Ohm as well. He was running winning races, but he was running into monsters, and then finally when he got away from him as a 3-year-old, he ended up winning in a big fashion. Or Is he that kind of horse that's just falling into this sort of scenario where he likes to run second more often than not? I want to see him run well on Saturday. He doesn't need to win, but he's going to have to run big.
I agree, and that's a big race to determine what horse he's going to be down the road. This horse needs racing. He's still a little bit green. I like the fact that Baffert could have easily put him away, gotten him ramped up early in the spring for a run perhaps at some of the Triple Crown events. I like that he's giving him one more chance in this race, and the trip could be fine. While he was up close in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he can sit just off the pace. And we've got two very talented stretch-out sprinters to look at, and one of them is your top pick.
Yeah, McKenzie, really, he's just been kind of the buzz all around the Baffert barn. We're going to take a look. He's only started one time. This was his debut score, and it was at 7/8 of a mile at Santa Anita. He sat just off the pace. He took over right now. You see Mike Smith pushing on him a little bit late with the lead change. You're going to see a flash of the tail here momentarily, but he goes on like a good thing. Gallop out was okay. The most important thing that you need to know about this horse, 99 Beyer speed figure, 120 TimeformUS rating as a 2-year-old in his first lifetime start. If you project, I'm not even saying project a forward move, if you just think he's going to successfully navigate 2 turns, he's strictly the horse to beat.
Those are freakishly good speed figures for a first-time starting 2-year-old. Doesn't matter who trains, and we expect the good ones from the Baffert barn, and this one has been working in typically fast Baffert fashion. What I liked about that debut effort, we all only saw the stretch run, is that this one showed a lot of agility to get to the outside, but without being headstrong, and to me, that's a good sign, because there's a horse breaking to his inside with speed, and I'm not sure McKenzie wants to get into a duel with this horse first time 2 turns, but I think he can sit successfully from just slightly off of the pace. I don't really have a strong opinion in this race. I kind of have a couple of questions about the Baffert horse. Matt brought up a good point. How good is Solomini to begin with? And with McKenzie, you always have the question. You never know until they try. This is first time 2 turns, so I'll take a shot with the 4 Runaway Ghost. And this horse really has to improve in order to win. And you should demand at least 10-1 or 12-1 on the tote before even taking the smallest of stabs. This horse returned off a 5-month layoff to win his most recent start. I'm hoping that layoff did him some good and that he's bigger and stronger and more mature. He beat a hapless field over the Tapeta surface last time out in a little stakes race at Golden Gate Field, but he did it the right way. He swamped those horses. I think McKenzie's going to take back off the pace. I think this horse is going to control, and we'll see if he can hold on, but demand a big price. Nicole Russo's taking a look at some of the major contenders in the CashCall Futurity from a pedigree standpoint. Let's go to that segment right now.
Hi guys, Nicole Russo coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky for Out of the Gate. And of course this week we're talking about the big races at Los Alamitos, the final Grade 1 events of the year for 2-year-olds. Let's take a look at the CashCall Futurity at Los Alamitos. Some nice horses have come out of this race in past years. As you can see, a short field of 5 for this year's edition, and discussion of the race has to center around the 2 Bob Baffert trained runners, McKenzie and Solomini. Bob Baffert has won this race a record 9 times, including the last 3 consecutive years. And if he were to keep that streak going with McKenzie, it would be especially meaningful. The son of Kentucky Derby winner Street Sense is named for the late Los Alamitos executive Brad McKenzie, a close friend of Baffert and the owners. You're watching McKenzie win his debut like a good thing here at Santa Anita. Now, the colt is out of Runway Model, a multiple graded winner around 2 turns as a 2-year-old, and Grade 1 placed in the Ashland as a 3-year-old. 3 of her 4 other winners have won at a mile and longer, including stakes-placed Rompin Reed. That says to me that this middle distance of the Futurity should be well within McKenzie's scope. Now, Baffert's other runner is the Zayat's Solomini, coming off this runner-up effort in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Classic sire Curlin, of course, also the sire of winner Good Magic, sweeping the exacta in that juvenile. We know the Curlins relish distance and a lot of class and route ability in Solomini's female family as well. His dam is a half-sister to juvenile champion Midshipman. She's also a half to Fast Cookie, who won the Grade 2 Cotillion routing, and she in turn the dam of multiple Grade 1 winner Frosted, who of course could carry his brilliant speed and distance, and also a new graded winner in Indulgent. So if you're looking for vulnerabilities in the Baffert duo, sorry, I just don't see them in this spot from a pedigree standpoint, the scope to handle this distance, and a lot of juvenile class as well. Thanks for tuning in to Out of the Gate this week. Now let's get you over to our Peter Thomas Fornatelli for some tournament talk.
Peter Thomas Fornatelli here, the DRF tournament editor and also the co-host of the DRF Players podcast. Here today to talk about tournaments. I think I should explain the facial hair first, though. Folks are used to seeing me with the full beard, the bushy beard, sometimes the fashion beard. We've got something very different going on here. The bet against fellow Out of the Gate contributor Jonathan Kinchin, we called it the Fu Manchu bet, but I'm calling this the Lemmy, which I think is a little more accurate than the Fu Manchu. This was as a result of my opposing Sharp as Tekka last weekend in a bet on the DRF Players podcast. Of course, I don't really mind the cool new facial stylings anyway, so it's not a bet that I'm too worried about losing, but I did just want to explain it before I dove in and talked about a little bit of tournament stuff here on Out of the Gate this week. And I want to start off by saying that we have some exciting new stuff happening on DRF tournaments this weekend. On Saturday, we're going to be running our first feeders for the Pegasus World Cup Betting Championship. This is an all-new tournament format. The big innovation here is no entry fee. It costs $12,000 to play, but that money goes to your bankroll. You get a prize pool that is going to be funded by the Stronach Group and basically by the play in the contest itself. 8-point-something% of every wager going to go to the prize pool. Gulfstream going to be guaranteeing $300,000. If you don't want to put up that $12,000, why don't you get involved trying to qualify? The feeders start on Saturday. Price points not yet established, but if you go and check out tournaments.drf.com, probably by the time you see this video, you'll have an opportunity to see exactly what you need to do to win that $12,000, which is tournament seems like a good deal under any circumstances. But if you don't have to put up the 12, if you can win it on DRF tournaments, I recommend going that way. I'll have a piece in the pages of Daily Racing Forum and drf.com later today about the specifics as well. So make sure to check that out. The other big news in tournaments this week has to do with the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge and its aftermath. As you probably know by now, there were some noted irregularities in the tournament this year. Breeders' Cup has launched a full investigation. Rumors coming out of the Arizona Symposium, as reported by Matt Hegarty in the pages of DRF and drf.com, suggest that it is coming to a conclusion, the investigation, and we may have a ruling as soon as this week. Again, perhaps even by the time you see this video, there'll be a story on drf.com about it. Keep your eyes peeled there. For those that don't know, what we know so far is that the Breeders' Cup are investigating at least 2 of the finishers who ended up in the money at the BCBC. And they are big names in the tournament world, including former Tour champion Eric Moomey and also the overall winner of the event, Nissan Gabe. Will be very interesting to see what the Breeders' Cup comes up with, if there are any disqualifications. Regardless of what happens with the specifics of this investigation, it seems very clear that the Breeders' Cup are taking this very seriously, and we can expect some newer, clearer, more stringent rules for that event going forward. Another controversy, which I've written about at DRF, had to do with a rule that was, in my opinion anyway, not written very clearly, a rule that about 95% of the people who participated in the tournament didn't understand, not because they didn't take the time to read it, but because it wasn't written clearly, that allowed the overall winner essentially not to make a bet at all in the tournament until very late on day 2. Have a feeling all this stuff is going to be looked at and hopefully will ultimately become a good thing for the contest world to have this stuff stated more clearly and enforced in a way that's much more fair to everybody in the contest world. So there you have it. That's a quick update. definitely go to tournaments.drf.com. Check out everything going on there, including feeders and qualifiers for the $1 million no takeout World Championship of Handicapping. We got stuff going on every operating day for the WCH. Speaking of innovative tournament formats, 1 million, no takeout. What else do you need to know? Go check it out. Tournaments.drf.com. I'm Peter Thomas Fornital, and Out of the Gate will be back right after this.
You asked, we listened. DRF Plus has more flexible subscription options. Use DRF Plus Basic for exclusive news and analysis, including our DRF Live real-time news feed. Or go deeper with DRF Pro and unlock buyers, closer looks, picks, and reports, including the DRF Daily Game Plan. DRF TV viewers get 50% off the plan of your choice. Use code DRFTV50 at checkout. Learn more about the DRF Plus subscription plans at drf.com/plus.
Let's take a look at the field from one of several stakes races at Gulfstream Park on Saturday. It's the prestigious Caribbean Classic, race number 11 at 1 1/8 for 3-year-olds. The first time this race is being held outside of Latin America. For expanded stakes previews, please head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Matt, we've got a big field going 1 1/8, and if you know anything about Gulfstream Park, it's a very short run to the first turn, and horses breaking from the outside better get a good spot early.
Probably going to be up against it a little bit, but the good news is it seems like some of these horses toward the outside, they've got a little bit of positional speed, so maybe you're going to be able to use them early and establish something similar to what we saw the winning tactics in the Claiming Crown Jewel last weekend on opening day.
One of the horses to beat, to be sure, is from Puerto Rico, the number 7, Justiciero, the Triple Crown winner in Puerto Rico. We're going to see his most recent run. This was an exhibition race against Platino, who is basically his rabbit. Platino is in this race, breaking from the inside, and this is Justiciero. He finishes hard in all his starts.
Yeah, comes on with his long sustained run, and it's one of those instances, you know, the distance isn't going to be a problem for him Saturday afternoon. The question is he going to be ready to take on this kind of company coming off of what was essentially, like you say, it was an exhibition race. I can't even call it an allowance race, but you'd like to think that he gets some fitness out of this and maybe he can take a step forward.
That's my major concern. This horse was running hard and strong every month, and then unfortunately that hurricane devastated Puerto Rico. This horse missed a lot of time. He came back with this exhibition race to sort of get him ready for this. We'll see if he is ready, but you know that his rabbit is at least going to establish a strong pace, which is necessary for him. You want a price horse in this race. Venezuela has done very well in this race in recent years. We're both going with Venezuelan-based runners.
Yeah, I'm going with La de Horacio. This is a 3-year-old filly, one of 3 fillies in this race, breaking from post 11. No bargain, obviously, going to need to work something out, but at the same time, I like the fact that she's getting back to 1 1/8. You look at the 2 most recent runs, 1.5 miles, 1.25. I think she just got a little bit short at the end of those. Now you get back to 9 furlongs. Look, Johnny V's going to have to work something out from that 11 post. She has a little bit of tactical speed. I'd like to think that he can use a little bit, establish some sort of position, and then maybe just take your shot, turn him for home.
She is one of several fillies in this race, and as such, she gets in very, very light from a weight standpoint. She has been so tough down in Venezuela. 6 for 11. She's banked over $1 million. She can step with these kind of horses. As Matt says, it's really all about the trip. My horse in here is still eligible for a non-winners of 2 life. It's the number 9, El Cubitan. We're going to go back to this horse's lone lifetime victory. It was in the career debut going 6.5 furlongs. You see this gray horse just get floated very, very wide, and then he just finishes it off nicely in 3 subsequent starts, all at longer distances, all in Grade 1 stakes races. He's finished well to be second, and this horse, like Matt's top selections, getting a little bit of a cutback in distance. This trainer-jockey combination has won this race twice. Jockey Jaramillo has won this race 5 times, and this horse is a closer like Justiciero, who should get some pace. I'm hoping that we've yet to see this horse's best in only start number 5. I think you can project a lot of upside, and if he moves forward with a little bit of pace, I'm expecting this horse to run hard in the stretch. We'll head back to Southern California now for the other Grade 1 stakes race on their card, the Starlet. 2-year-old fillies compete at Los Alamitos in the Grade 1 Starlet Stakes. Let's take a look at this field. We have a field of 5, but 3 pretty good fillies in the 3, Dream Tree, undefeated for Bob Baffert, the 4, War Heroine, who was super impressive first time out, and the 2, Petey Bianchi, who exits the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Those 3 fillies figure to take the lion's share of the wagering. For expanded stakes previews, visit video.drf.com. Now, Matt, the 3 and the 4, they're stretching out, and they both have some sort of speed. That could set things up for the 2, Petey Bianchi, who likes to come from off the pace.
Petey Bianchi is also the class of this entire field. You go through her running lines and see the likes that she's been running up against, the Moonshine Memories, the Caledonia Roads and the Breeders' Cup and all these different spots. She makes a lot of sense in here, especially if you think those 2 are going to hook up early.
We'll go back to Petey Bianchi's 3rd place finish earlier this year. This race is the Grade 1 Chandelier. Her first start around 2 turns against the aforementioned Moonshine Memories, alluring start, 2 of the better 2-year-old fillies in the country, and she really doesn't disgrace herself at all. And last time in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, she was a little bit closer to that hot pace than I expected, and she finished evenly, finishing ahead of Wonder Godot, who came back to win last week in the Demoiselle with an 82 buyer. It's really all about whether the other sprinters burn themselves out and set things up for this horse, because she's okay.
The other thing to keep in mind about a horse coming off the pace that you think is just going to grind away, it's Los Alamitos. You've got one of the longest stretch runs in the entire country, and I wonder, like you said, you're going to have 2 stretch out sprinters. If for some reason they hook up early and they throw it down, you got a long way to go before you get to the wire. Maybe that plays into the hooves of Petey Bianchi.
In the CashCall Futurity, you like McKenzie. Very impressive debut winner. In the Starlet, you like a very impressive debut winner.
Yeah, War Heroine, I got to be honest, this is one I saw. I said, I got a little excited here. We're going to take a look at that maiden score. This was at Del Mar. The most impressive thing about this, you haven't even seen, it was just the easy speed that she showed early on. She put 6 on this field in a heartbeat, and I like the fact that Flavian just keeps her to task. He doesn't really get into her. He basically wraps up on her for the final 16th of a mile. This is visually, to me, as impressive as you're going to find. The gallop out was reasonable enough, but you can't expect a gallop out when she hasn't been asked to run for the final 16th of a mile. I feel like if she is able to successfully stretch out, that's a big if. On the dam side, there's a lot of turf. She's by lawn row. I wonder if she's able to stretch out, and if Dream Tree gives a little bit too much respect to her, boy, I think she could make you pay.
No, she's brilliantly fast, this filly, and she's getting the lead. Dream Tree's quick out of the gate. She's not as fast as War Heroine, and the question is, how will she be able to rate? Sometimes these stretch out sprinters, they just get their head early going into that first turn, and they just start taking off. We'll see what kind of mind this filly has. We know she's got the goods from an ability standpoint. She is very fast. As for Dream Tree, she's 2 for 2 in her career. Both of those races, she easily could have lost. She won by a nose both times after opening up a big lead in the stretch. Let's go back to her most recent race. This is start number 2 in the Desi Arnaz. She gets the jump once more on Midnight Basou, who she nosed out in the career debut on October the 27th. Midnight Basou, who Matt and I both are very high on, is charging in the stretch. Dream Tree finds the wire just in the nick of time for the 2nd consecutive race. I think this race, the Grade 1 Starlet, comes down to tactics. While Dream Tree is fast, the fact that this is a short field might work to her advantage, because I think the plan from Drayden Van Dyke is to break, let War Heroine clear off to the front, ease to the outside, and then you got to time it right. You don't want to go too soon where War Heroine still has plenty of horse. That just softens up both of the front runners and sets things up for Petey Bianchi. So it's up to Drayden to kind of time it right, maybe feel Petey Bianchi coming before unleashing War Heroine. Kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, tracking in second. But I think Dream Tree's okay for Baffert. 3rd-time starter, I think, has enough bottom after 2 sprints to handle the mile and a 16th. I'll take Dream Tree in the Grade 1 Starlet Stakes. JK hit an exacta last week in the Cigar Mile. He's got a daily double play at Los Alamitos, and Craig Milkowski's TimeformUS Spotlight focuses on the feature race at Aqueduct on Saturday, the Garland of Roses. Let's go to those segments right now.
Hey everybody, welcome to JK's Play of the Day. Had a little success last week in the Cigar Mile. Had an exacta with Sharp-Ass Tech on top, 3 horses underneath. A $3 bet returned $16, a little bit better than 5-1. Let's try to run some of those winnings back. We're going to take it out to the West Coast for a daily double play out there in the 2 grade 1s, the Los Al Futurity and the Starlet. If you want to throw this double play into the mix of a pick 5 with some other opinions, or you can just play it in a double, or even find a pick 3 that makes sense. I'm going to give you a double for out of the gate here. Starting in race 3, the first leg, the grade 1 Los Al Futurity. Solomini, I think, is going to take a lot of money. The Breeders' Cup effort, the race before that with Bolt Doro, the figure, but I'm going to go with the other Baffert, McKenzie, named after one of Baffert's good friends that is no longer with us. You always kind of follow that trend. I did the same with Bobby's Kitten. Follow the good names. It usually means there's a good horse. McKenzie ran huge on debut. Back in October at Santa Anita. It was inside favoring day. That day the horse was wide all the way around there. Ran a huge time form figure for a first-time starter, a 120. Los Al, we've talked about it before on the DRF Players podcast. You want to be drawn outside. The inside is not where you want to be. This horse is drawn outside from the far outside in the 5-hole, outside of every horse, which I think will be an advantage on the day. I'm going to single McKenzie in the first leg of the double starting in race 3. And the second race, the Starlet, I'm going to take another outside drawn horse, the 4 War Heroine. War Heroine for Peter Miller, debuted at Del Mar the following week after the Breeders' Cup. Everyone understands, I think for the most part, that the inside is not where you wanted to be Breeders' Cup weekend. This horse spent the majority of the time down on the inside. I expect a big improvement second time. Drawn outside of Dream Tree, who could be a little bit distance limited, at least it appears that way in the previous starts going 6 and 7. I think that War Heroine is going to be extremely tough, drawn outside off of that previous race where he was against the track. She was against the track, excuse me. So those are going to be the 2 singles for me. I think there actually will be a little bit of value there. A lot of people are going to use Dream Tree. A lot of people are going to use Solomini. If you can beat them both, I think you're sitting on a ticket that you can make some money. So like I said, tag this into a pick 3, play the double by itself, or let this kind of be your guiding tool in a pick 5. Good luck. We'll see you next week.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski of TimeformUS for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. Today I'm going to take a look at the Garland of Roses being run at Aqueduct on Saturday. It's a 6-furlong sprint for fillies and mares. It's going to be run on the new course. It used to run on the inner dirt this time of year, but we're still on the main and will be now that we have 2 turf courses at Aqueduct. So the course is a little bit different than what we get this time of year in the past. The first thing we're going to do is look at the TimeformUS preview page and just look at a few things of note in this race. Number 1 is the TimeformUS race rating of 118. That gives a pretty good idea what kind of speed figure it's going to take to win this race. You can see a small version of the pace projector, which we're going to look at in a second here on the right side of your screen. And you can see it's coded in blue where it says see details. That indicates there's not a lot of speed in the race, and the pace projector thinks that it could favor horses on or near the lead. One thing I do want to note here, and it does have an effect on this race, is you can see that 2 of the horses are also entered at Laurel on Saturday in a similar race. As far as this goes, I just went and handicapped as if they're going to be there and hope that they're running, because I actually think one of them's a horse to beat in here, and that's going to be my selection. Let's take a look at the pace projector in a little more detail. And you can see that flag where it shows favors horses on or near the early lead. And it also shows a horse on a clear lead, and that would be number 4, Miss Lucas Point. She looks to be clear. We'll look at her a little bit closer later. One thing I also want to talk about, it shows that the blinkers are on number 6. We do account for that in the pace projector, but here the horse just doesn't have much speed at all, so she is still shown towards the back of the field. Now let's look at Miss Lucas Point a little bit. And one thing to note is she is a 3-year-old filly. She's one of 2 in the field, and definitely the better of the 2 in my opinion, taking on older horses here. And what I like about her is a few things, really. The first one is that she's going to be clear on the lead. And I like that this race is 6 furlongs and not 6.5 and 7, which they can run on the Aqueduct main track. but speed's just a lot more effective at 6 than it is at those distances. And I liked her comeback race a lot. She actually scratched out of a stakes race to run in a Parks allowance. She went all 3 to 5. She obviously towered over the field. So I don't put a whole lot of stock in that 110 TimeformUS pace figure she ran last time. And you can see by the comments, she was kind of ridden like a 3 to 5 shot. She just stayed wide out in the track, stayed clear of everybody else, and won easily when asked. What I go back to is her race 3 races back where she ran a 114 while still a 2-year-old. She did it back at Laurel in 2016. And if you think this horse could have matured at all, and judging by her return, I think she has, she should easily be capable of a 120 or so in this field. And that would definitely be good enough to win this race. She did come off that long layoff, but looked good doing it. So she is going to be my top pick. The other horse I'm a little interested in and probably place some exactas with is a horse that's shown second in the pace projector, and that's Pico Uno. She is shown second. She's not really a front runner. She shows tactical speed. She never really makes the lead, but she's always right up there. And you can see 2 back at Saratoga. She won a New York bred stakes race with a big 119 TimeformUS speed figure. She did bomb a little bit last time out at 8 to 5. She was fractious loading into the gate, had kind of a tough wide trip against decent horses, but any kind of return to form here to that race 2 back, and I think she could give Miss Locust Point a challenge. And those are the 2 I'm looking at. And the one other thing I do want to note is that 119 comes from a strong race. If you click on the top 3 in the race, that'll open up our chart window in TimeformUS, and you can see some of the horses from that race have already come back and run quite well. A couple of them are in this field. You have Kazan and Absolutely, I believe is how you say that, who have run. Both have improved their speed figures. Absolutely won her last race with a nice 118. And even Frosty Margarita, who ran last in that race, came back to win a nice turf race with a good 106, improving her speed figure a bit. So Pico Uno does enter a pretty strong race. That's a tool I like to use to go into the charts and dig through and see what the horses have done even before and since that race. So to recap here, I'm going to go with Miss Locust Point on the win end. I think she's the most likely winner, and probably play some exactas with Pico Uno if they don't get bet too heavily. That's it for TimeformUS this week. Now let's send it back to Dan in the studio.
Time for our best bet segment. Matt, where are you going this week?
Race 2, Gulfstream Park. You're going to be looking at the Wait a While. This is for 2-year-old fillies on the turf going a mile. I like Stainless, and we're going to go 2 starts back for Stainless to the Jessamine at Keeneland, where she comes from the back of the pack, way out of it, over soft going. And okay, she's following a horse right now, and everything's working out okay. She's going to take a little while, but the big thing to keep in mind, the horse that she's following was Rushing Fall. Rushing Fall, all she did was come back to win the Juvenile Fillies Turf in the Breeders' Cup. Stainless chose to run on the dirt. Now, my thing with Stainless is she's run on the dirt 3 times. She hasn't picked her feet up really in any of them with the exception of the maiden score. This, to me, right here, what we're seeing in the Jessamine is the best race of her career. I think there's some other highly thought of horses running in the Wait a While that is going to take a little bit of money. I think this is an instance where you might be able to get a decent price on a Pletcher Velasquez kind of outfit here. I'll go with Stainless in the second race. And if that rain comes to Gulfstream, not a problem. She ran that race in the Jessamine over soft ground.
That was the best race by far that this horse has ever run, and it's been on the turf, and you just see the horse that beat him. Rushing Fall is just a really talented runner. This horse could be okay on the turf. I'm going to Laurel, race number 8. I like the number 2, Lewisfield, in the Howard M. Bender Memorial, a $75,000 race. Now, Lewisfield is 3 for 3 with blinkers. He's won those races by a combined 27 lengths. So we're going to go back to his most recent start on November the 10th. His first start off about a 2-month layoff. On this afternoon at Laurel, you really wanted to be outside and you wanted to come from well off of the pace. This horse was up close to the pace throughout. He takes over the lead, drifts down towards the inside, but it doesn't bother him in the least. He goes on to win. The runner-up came back to win this race and earned an 88 Beyer speed figure. He's only started 4 times. I still think there's better to come from the number 2 Lewisfield, who can work out a tracking trip in 2nd or 3rd under Arnoldo Bocachica. I'm a little bit worried about in this race about It's the Journey, a horse I made a horse watch based on a win 2 starts back at Laurel, and a horse that was completely overmatched in graded stakes action at Keeneland, but I know that horse is taking money. I want the upside, the 2, Lewisfield, 9-2 in the morning line, race number 8 at Laurel. That's all for this week. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.